Hello, thank you so much for coming to the Sashiko Live Streaming. This is Atsushi, and this is the live streaming where I talk about Sashiko while doing the Sashiko stitching, without any editing or hiding. So this is not a tutorials or webinar or what else? In the class. So I will not answer the kind of technical questions that I have already answered on the YouTube channel. It's more like the place to stitch together while sharing my stories and our Sashiko stories. Just let me check the audio first. Okay, that's good. Audio is good. So I will start at the same time. Well, today is the day for Harikuyou. Harikuyou is the day for like a ritual anniversary for the broken needle or bent needles. The needles that worked very hard for us would need proper goodbye, and then this is one of the day, February 8th, to have them to be sort of farewell. And I have done that on the December 8th, which is also the day for that. So I don't have any broken needle right now, but technically speaking, I shouldn't be stitching today. It's another day to let the needles rest, as well as myself. So technically speaking, it's not a good idea to stitch, but at the same time, it is technically in Japan. It's the February 9th, and I think it's okay to stitch a little bit. So I will stitch. Without stitching, it's gonna be just live streaming like that, and it's not gonna be that great. So I will start stitching. Although this is the Kotoyoka. One announcement. There's one announcement. I will make a public and official announcement next week, sometimes next week. But the date for the Japan Sashiko Tour 2024 has been fixed. It is from November 17th to November 27th. It's really like far from now. It's 9 months from now. I expect them to be in Japan on 16th. So like 16th will be the time to say hello to everybody. Then it's gonna be 10 full days Sashiko tour with a lot of workshops, meeting people. It's gonna be the tour focusing on Sashiko and meeting Sashiko people. If you are interested in being on the wait list, please check that link on this live streaming. I will send invitation one by one based on the priorities. For example, for those who took my workshop already, either online or 3 days or 1 day core and essence workshop, you will receive the invitation regardless of the numbers or the orders of the waitlist. If you have not taken those workshop, I'm sorry, but you will probably get a little later. And of course, those who are on the Patreon get the earliest for that. But there's no fees to be on the waiting list, and there's no commitment for that. So if you are interested in that, please take a look at the Google form, and then that'd be great if you could take a look at that. So that's the announcement, and that's the only announcement today. So I will start stitching. There we go. Boop. Boop. Oh, it's quite still cold here. I hope that there's no big noise from my heater. I have a heater on my leg. Not on leg. Foot? Feet warmer? Foot warmer? So I hope that sound is not that bad. Today I got a good question. I got a list of questions today as the theme or topic to discuss in the live streaming. That's very, very, very helpful for me to have that kind of specific questions in terms of Sashiko culture. So I will try to introduce some of the questions, maybe one question, and I would like to make sure to answer as much as I can. And sometimes I might not have the answer for that, but it is very, very, very difficult to understand. Not difficult, challenging. Probably that's the better way to say. It's probably challenging to understand what I am trying to convey because it is outside of, it's not even comfort zone. It's outside of the expectation or imagination. It's probably our kind of process to learn or even experience something completely different. So if you have not eaten sushi, let's say 30 years ago, 40 years ago, if you have never eaten sushi, raw fish, it is almost impossible to explain what it tastes like. Even soy sauce, that black sauce, right now it's probably everybody knows how it tastes right now, but until that is introduced as the practice or more like ordinarily, it is difficult to understand. And that is the same thing for kind of idea of Sashiko. And those repetition of those getting the question and answering in a many different way. One answer is not going to give us the full answer, so I have to, or even I would like to, offer as many types of answer as possible from as many angles as possible. So the question would be very much appreciated, and I will talk on, like I have probably few days amount of few live streaming amount of questions, so I will introduce that. And the question can be sent to my email address or DM or even here on the comment section. I will try my best to cover that. Okay, so the first question, I hope it's okay to share that on the screen. Just let me. Ah. Okay. So the first question is. I just point the number 3, but it's not the third question or the less than it's there's no meaning for the numbers. It is pretty much the order I received, and this is probably the I don't want to say easiest, but I would be able to elaborate this question. Why is Sashiko special? I will read out loud the comments itself. By special, I guess I mean why does it need gatekeeping? I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm truly curious. Atsushi mentioned once that Sashiko didn't have a history of masters, that learning passed down person to person, not in a guild system. It's orderly, so does that make co-opting it without an effort to understand and acknowledge this history and the reality of people's ordinary lives worse? A little violent? So this is the kind of question, and they've been trying to understand the difference between the modern day Sashiko and mokuhanga. Mokuhanga is the wood carving printing. So it's probably the difference between Sashiko and other crafting form or other art form. So I will try to elaborate this. So the first thing first, the question is, why is Sashiko special? What is so special about Sashiko? To answer that question, there is no speciality about Sashiko. And Some people call me I'm the gatekeeper, but I do not intend to be the gatekeeper, or I don't even wish to be the gatekeeper. There is no gate. I don't see any gate, for that matter. There is nothing to protect. There is nothing to be hidden. It's just open field of Sashiko, and because there is no gate, I don't think I am doing the gatekeeping. So there's Sashiko is why is Sashiko special? The answer should be because it is because, but unfortunately my answer is Sashiko is not special at all. Why am I doing Sashiko? Why am I talking about Sashiko? Because that's my fate. That's something I received as the kind of something given. I didn't choose. I was given that. I happen to be living with Sashiko for my entire life, so if somebody minimized or if somebody defined the Sashiko without us, without our Sashiko, it's like I feel that it is the definition. So it's like an identity theft. It is actually the identity theft. So something you identify yourself becomes something completely different outside of your culture. So I don't think I'm doing the gatekeeping. As the result, what I do may be looking like the gatekeeping, but there's nothing that I would like to protect per se. I just would like to make sure that the Sashiko I practice, which Sashiko I respect, as well as Sashiko I admire, with many people that I spend time with, are not gonna be left behind in this trend. If Sashiko did not become the trend, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. I am probably doing the opposite of what I'm doing. I will be promoting Sashiko to the world so that Sashiko's culture may be alive in the future. And I happen to be able to speak English. So I would be introducing Sashiko to the world. But it's kind of ironic because Sashiko was introduced already. I kind of have to, but I don't think I'm gatekeeping that. I'm not denying others. I'm just saying that that's not enough. That's just not explaining enough. Like, I don't know how we can describe ourselves, but when I describe ourselves, we have some explanation, no description, right? I am Japanese, I am 40 years old, there's those description or explanation, and it is sad or it's kind of scary if some of them are ignored. Like if somebody said like I don't care about your age, well, but that does not define the whole picture, whole identity of me. So that's the question to this why is Sashiko so special? Let me check the question, sorry. What does it mean? What does it mean for them to be left behind? Left behind means simply left behind. Left behind. Sashiko introduced in English is not explaining enough, including people enough, so that they are leaving people behind. They're literally leaving people and stories behind in the trend of English. In English. Like, one example would be this thimble, right? In 2026, I started using this on the YouTube, and it has been wow, 8 years? No way. Wow. It's 8 years. Wow, has been 8 years. And now we see that pretty much everywhere because they copied it. But if I were not to speak up, if I did not speak up 8 years ago, this culture could have been lost, left behind. They still exist and they still stitch and they still are known for their work. What if it's not? What if it's not? What if it's not? It's not. Some of the sashikos are gone already. And some of them are in the process of completely being gone. Some of them are very, and we don't know that 100%. I know some of the sashiko which is completely gone. I know some of the sashiko which is actually declining. I have seen that. I was with them. But one thing I can say for sure is that the trend in English of sashiko does not include everybody. Does it have to include everybody? I think it should. When it is done in Japanese, it's kind of the choice, collective choice to include them or not. But when it happens outside of Japan in different language, like non-Japanese language, it's not gonna be the choice. Those who can speak English or those who can understand English will get the ticket, so-called privilege, to join that train, although the train itself is called Sashiko. So in Japan, if it's done in Japanese, what they need as a ticket is the ability to do Sashiko. However, in this trend of Sashiko in English, one does not have to be able to do Sashiko much, or they don't even have to understand what Sashiko is, or they don't even have to make commitment, proper understanding, proper training, proper studying for that. The fact that they can speak English and then a little bit of confident, I guess, and that'll be enough to make sure that they can be the master. In that process, people are left behind. And some of them are too late. That's why I keep saying that, it might be too late for me to speak up. And they are possibly too late, but we may be able to recover. And that is that's what I'm doing. I don't think that's why it's a gatekeeping. It's more like introducing. So there's nothing special about Sashiko. I make it special because it's special to me. Sorry, Sashiko. There's nothing special about Sashiko to protect for Japanese people. That's why they are not doing it. There's not that much movement to protect Sashiko. But for some of us, like me, and there's other Japanese who care about those changes, that's special for them to preserve the style of the Sashiko they practice. I hope it makes sense. I hope it makes sense. Ultimately speaking, in order to fully understand what Sashiko is, one has to be able to speak Japanese. But that's not fair. Well, that is kind of fair, because why do everybody have to speak English to defend or to describe what they do? But it's not realistic to ask everybody to learn Japanese first, especially when the trend is so strong, and I happen to be here, that I can do both Sashiko and English. So I am I am aware that I look like the gatekeeper, but I'm more like I may be slowing it down so that more people can join this train, but there's nothing special about it. There's just, like, it's simply running Stitch, but there are people like not less than 100 people who spend their life in this. Some of them are gone, the majority of them are gone, but they practice that, and I am not saying we should admire them or worship them, because that's not what they probably are expecting. At the same time, I don't want to ignore that they existed. Not knowing is, okay, another thing. If we don't know it, that's perfectly fine, because there's no way to know everything. But because we have a choice, we have now the tool to speak up. Like, if I didn't have the internet, I wouldn't be able to speak up. My voice will not be delivered, and that would be completely buried or left behind. And Sashiko will be completely different thing. But because thanks to the internet and social media, I can be the own media, and as the result, my voice has some influence right now. I didn't have that much power back then, but the more I try to share, the more I get. Like, support is the kind of power that I can get. Ah, just let me read the comment. They still exist in this. Yeah. I'm sorry. That makes sense. Yes. Okay. Good. It is kind of interesting. I often say that Sashiko is not in the past. Sashiko is still ongoing. At the same time, some of the Sashikos are already gone, which we don't really know, which we have to only imagine. But the Sashiko I practice could be gone if I don't do that, right? Why is speaking Japanese necessary for truly understand Sashiko? Um, Let me explain that. That's really it is difficult. It's very challenging to explain why it is important to speak Japanese to fully understand Sashiko. It comes. I have to stop stitching. Sorry. It comes from several perspective or directions. And the second question is, why teach Sashiko to people who will never speak Japanese? Why teach Sashiko to people who will never speak Japanese? Why teach Sashiko to people who will never? Well, because I am not expecting to fully understand what Sashiko is, and I am not expecting myself to fully understand what Sashiko is. So it is already the outside of the question if somebody say that I know everything about Sashiko, because at that point it's not Sashiko already. There's no way for one person to fully understand Sashiko, but in order to try to fully understand Sashiko, they need to be able to communicate, not speak, but communicate. It's probably the same thing, but be fluent, be proficient enough to communicate. First, this is more like I don't know, linguistic perspective. Linguistic perspective is that this is how language is kind of formed. I need somebody's help for that. But we have a pretty different system in the language. We sometimes do not speak the subject, the Japanese, and we put the verb at the end of the sentence. I would say that the Japanese is the language to encourage to imagine in between lines. Imagine means like read between lines. We need to imagine or expect or fill the gap, unspoken message to fully communicate in the language we speak. And it sounds crazy, but because that's what we do in a very ordinary process, we can do that. And by being able to speak Japanese, one can understand or be familiar with the process of understanding or feeling in between lines. That's the linguistic perspective, and that can be like I'm not, I'm not qualified to talk about it. It's bigger than that. But that's my understanding. And the second perspective is this is more realistic, but there are so many Japanese Sashiko teachers who does not speak English. That's it. That is the reason if one really think that they are fully understanding what Sashiko is, if they don't speak Japanese, that's not true because they are not communicating as many Japanese as possible. The fact that they don't speak Japanese is limiting their ability to communicate to the people who actually practice Sashiko. They can probably talk to somebody who can speak English, but that does not, like, being Japanese itself is not a good qualification to be good at Sashiko. One has to stitch, one has to be able to practice that. So it's like, which comes first? Is that person, is that person, was that person first Sashiko stitcher, then learn English, or she or he was speaking English, then learn Sashiko to teach? So which comes first will make a big difference. And there are quite many Japanese Sashiko stitchers who does not speak English, and I am willing to be the bridge. That's my job probably. And the Sashiko tour I talked about in the beginning of this live streaming is the one opportunities for me to actually make a bridge in between. So that is the second perspective, that it's more like realistic. I really don't understand one can say that they understand Sashiko without even speaking Japanese. It's kind of impossible from that perspective. And on top of that, which I think it's more important than that, is the linguistic perspective, which is very challenging to explain, and I don't know if I am saying something appropriate or not accurate, or like I might be completely off the off the grid, because that's my imagination or understanding. It's probably correct. And why teach Sashiko to people who will never speak Japanese? Because I want them to enjoy Sashiko. That's about it. I did not start teaching Sashiko because I wanted everybody to be able to do Sashiko. It's more like request based. It is still request based for that matter. I don't know if I would be teaching Sashiko if there is no demand. I have to think. I really have to think when the demand is gone. But up till today, in last 6 years, I don't think I have applied or submit application to teach Sashiko. I don't think so. I may have forgotten one or two, but it's very fortunate. But it's usually the organization like guild, quilting guild, museum, studios, or those people find me and ask me if I would offer the Sashiko workshop. And the point is that one does not have to understand any Japanese to enjoy Sashiko or to practice Sashiko or to call their stitching Sashiko. Like the Japanese is not necessary to enjoy Sashiko or be inspired by Sashiko or use Sashiko for their art. It's really not, there's no requirement for that. What I'm saying, like the necessity of Japanese is those who think they know what Sashiko is. Well, I often say that they're teachers or authors who kind of define what Sashiko is. I believe that they should be able to speak Japanese. But for those who just wish to enjoy Sashiko or want to try Sashiko, then language is very, very. It would be great. It would be great if they can speak, but that's not really the requirement to reach to some level. And some may actually. Well, no, nobody can fully understand what Sashiko is. It's impossible to do that. It's kind of saying like I fully understand what Japanese is. It, it doesn't happen like that. When Japanese language is translated into English, some of hidden meaning might be skipped, and abbreviated translation may become a word. So ability to communicate in Japanese is important. Thank you. This is from the Japanese person who can speak English. Thank you so much, Tsuchiko-san. So it is very important. It is very important to be proficient, fluent in both language. But again, I just don't want you to misunderstand. This is very important to declare, specify, clarify, and then emphasize, focus. You do not need Japanese to enjoy, to stitch, to call you to be inspired by Sashiko. To enjoy Sashiko, forget about the language. If you try to study, that'd be great. But I'm just talking about when they declare, when they state that they are the master or they understand fully about, like, some people say that. I don't know why, but some people say that this teacher, this book, this I am the all one stop for Sashiko. Like one has to read this book, one has to take this class, and then that's all they need to learn what Sashiko is. And my question is, really? Really? Okay, that's because I don't know what Sashiko is, to be honest. I'm trying my best to define it, but yeah, that's that's why I have a live streaming in Japanese, because I don't know it. I need their Japanese people's input. Japanese live streaming is actually the process or the opportunity for me to learn. And sometimes it's the place for me to balance if I'm go out of my mind. If I go crazy, they will stop me. So far, 6 years, 7 years, I think I am pretty consistent. So nothing nothing crazy happened. But yeah, one does not need Japanese to enjoy Sashiko, but when they say that they, in order to fully understand what Sashiko is, I think the Japanese is important. I think. Why did we jump to this conversation? I forgot that. There was some shift. Sashiko is not that special is the first thing, and then huh. Language is very, very, very interesting. I really find it fascinating. Like, um, uh, they transform. Language transform, especially the word, catchy word, transform, and then they really start moving themselves. Does anyone fully know what Sashiko is? I don't think so. I have never seen any Japanese who say that they fully understand what Sashiko is or know what Sashiko is. They say that they know about their Sashiko, as I say that I know about my Sashiko per se. The Sashiko we practice in our region, I know that. I can say I'm the master of that. But that's about it. I No, I have never seen or met any Japanese Sashiko artisans who declare that they are the. I don't even know anybody who call themselves masters, or even skilled for that matter. It's the humbleness, it's the a little bit of too much humbleness, but the language thing. There are very, very few words, not a few, quite many words actually. They as the people in English use. Some words are ikigai, kintsugi, wabi-sabi, zen, and probably soon minge will kick into here. But I sometimes receive that comment saying, "Wow, fascinating! You are doing the phallic version of kintsugi," and that comment means well. She or he is complimenting what I'm doing, so I'm not gonna say that's wrong. But in reality, Sashiko is not really kintsugi. I will explain. I will explain it later. And also, there was a comment on my Instagram saying that that's your ikigai. Sashiko is my ikigai. Not really. I may say that 50 years from now, but as of now, it's not ikigai. And ikigai is the purpose of living, if I were to summarize it. And it was introduced by some like very famous researchers why some of the Japanese in Okinawa are very long living, and they use the word ikigai in Okinawa, and that kind of got translated that it's like a mixture of all the like self care for that matter. Why the purpose of living, but that's not quite equal to the like if I complete the translation by saying ikigai is the purpose of living, that's a little scary. It's really missing something important. And then you may ask, what is something important that I don't really have a word yet? And it's much much easier when I speak in Japanese. 私の生きがいはサシコです。サシコは私の生きがいです。It's kind of it's toward the end of life. 生きがいはサシコではないね。うん。It makes me feel like a little weird. So is wabi sabi, so is kintsugi is like kintsugi is also difficult. Well, we may have to skip kintsugi today. It may really need a little more than that, but there's so many Japanese word which is, I would say, simplified. I don't know if it's okay to say simplified because I don't know the whole picture. But as Sashiko is very simplified in English, some of the words are very simplified. You are really good with language and culture. I've told Japanese people what you said about Japanese don't interrupt because the sentence structure required waiting until the end of the sentence. Yeah. this may sound super crazy, and I still don't understand. When you have a meeting, like imagine that you have a meeting, okay? What is the purpose of meeting or discussion for that matter? Like, why do you have a meeting? You may bring, like, your organizer should bring the agenda to discuss. Like, if it's a meeting for the community they belong to, they will, like, then they have to make some rules or, conditions or regulations. And they should bring the agenda, they should bring the topic to discuss. Sometimes they need probably the base to discuss with. So they have to define, they have to make a decision, right? At the end of the meeting. That's the purpose of meeting, in my understanding. Some of the meeting in Japan does not have any conclusion. It's maybe especially in my place, but we have a very, 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 very interesting word in Japanese, soshasoyazo. It's a very local word. But soshasoyazo conclude everything without any concrete conclusion. They discuss about something for 2 hours, or like, of course, with drinking, with alcohol, with the food and everything. And then at the end of the discussion, they say that the social soyazo, and that means the end of the end of the discussion or meeting, without anybody writing down what has been discussed, what has been decided. But the point is, without summarizing the conclusion or without articulating what have they discussed or decided, the people who join that meeting share the same agreement. And I still don't know. I was too young when I joined that community, so I like what is what? And I kind of kept asking around what has been decided because I did not catch that. It's really, it requires very, very, very long living experience. But I was expecting to receive some of the summary of what they have decided, like who goes to where, who has cleaning duties. Nothing has been, no conclusion for the meeting, yet they function like that. So that can probably continue to the next topic in the next week about dualism. We don't define many things, yet we can maintain the society. So we can conclude that everything is great, so we can all discuss. So we can all coexist, not discuss, coexist. So I'm still, I'm not Japanese enough for that. There's a reason I'm outside of Japan. I didn't know that. I'm very weird. I'm not a really true. I don't want to say true Japanese. It might be a bit of too much. But some people find me non-Japanese for that matter, and I know some other I think she's American, but some other American who is more Japanese than I am. Yes. So I am in between, but because I was raised in a very, very unique environment with so many the Japanese, I think I know bit. I am a little bit trained for that purpose. Just a second. See, this happens if you keep talking and stitching. So let me just uh, let's see what I can do. Okay. 切れちった。切れちった。ちょっと待って。Even other Japanese didn't realize that about interrupting. Yeah, it is kind of rude to interrupt somebody's talking. Yet, this is a really cultural thing. Um, it's kind of my understanding, but it's kind of explainable from the historical perspective. After all, Japan is island. There's a Hokkaido. Well, Hokkaido was not part of Japan a long time ago. It was another nation or country or group called Ainu. And Okinawa was not part of Japan. There was the Ryukyu Kingdom. So there's a main island of Japan, but regardless, it's the island. In order to go outside of the country, you either have to use the ship or airplane. From Hokkaido to Russia, I don't know if there's a bridge. I don't think so. So after all, Japan is the island, either if they open the country or not. Other countries are kind of land, so you can kind of define that this is the border. From here to inside, it's US. After this, it's Canada. There's a line, right? This line is very, 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 very strong because it's the border. Like, border of the Mexico and US is quite strong. At the same time, when we don't have that strong government, that border can be easily crossed. Let's say that if I became like a weird person in Japan, or the person who got disliked, who does not belong to that culture, back then, a few hundred years ago, or even 1,000 years ago, I didn't have anywhere to go because it's the island. So in order to be there, I had to be somewhat okay with the difference or non-conclusive ideas. Of course, we had a lot of war in Japan, so what I'm saying is not one single person, but it's more like ideal. Not idea, like a big idea. So unlike the other land, what other countries which has the land connecting each other, I think we developed the culture of not excluding different things based on the difference. Of course, there are a lot of exclusion. We tried to completely exclude Christianity at some point. At the same time, we are the culture which have Shinto and Buddhism at the same time, which may lead another discussion that Shinto is not a religion. So we have to really be careful about it. But one thing for sure is that Japan is quite weird. Strange. In a good way, bad way, that's something we define, but it is very weird. I don't. I have a. It's just like love and hate. I love Japan, but I hate Japan too. I love to go back to Japan. I love to move back to Japan, but I'm very afraid of that. I'm very scared of that too. Because there's a probably a big possibility that I don't fit in. I might not be welcomed. So it is quite difficult to explain that, but it's something I have to go through because it is easy to say that in order to understand Sashiko, in order to teach Sashiko, you should be able to be fluent in Japanese, period. That's easy to say, but that does not help us to come to the sort of mutual place. I don't think I have said that I I don't think I have ever defined others as wrong in my live streaming. So the Sashiko introduced in English is not wrong. Don't get me wrong there. I keep saying that it's simplified and it's romanticized, but they're not wrong. It is what it is. They explain some of the Sashiko quite well. It's just not enough to describe as the whole picture of Sashiko. And in order to understand the whole picture of Sashiko, which I don't even know, one has to be able to speak Japanese from two perspectives. One is linguistic, and one basic one is like, why I want them to be able to talk to the other Japanese who does not speak English. If this, I hope this doesn't happen. If one says that the Japanese has to speak English, have to be fluent in English to protect their culture, then that's a problem. But right now, it is like that because the trend like that's the power of English. We may forget the power of this language. I am privileged for that. I had enough opportunities to learn what Sashiko, not Sashiko, how to speak English, and some people don't have those opportunities. Of course, it comes with a lot of my personal commitment. It's not easy. It's not as much as I minimize my achievement. It's not that easy to be able to speak English like this. It took decades. I probably told you this story, but I could not even order milk for the first day in the US. That's a so scary memory. I was in San Francisco in Powell Hotel back then in 2001, right before September 11. No, it's 2002. It was summer, and then I I have decided to go to the US, and I was preparing for that. At the same time as I wanted to try to see what US like. So I was very impulsive back then. I am impulsive right now too, but I just jumped into the airplane and then decided to go to San Francisco for a week or so. It's kind of close, right? From Japan to San Francisco, it's not that far. And there was a little tiny cafe, or they sold a muffin, and I ordered the muffin, and I ordered the coffee, and also I wanted to have milk. Muffin was okay. I kind of pointed out, and then I said muffin. So she, I think it was she, elderly person, she understood what I was asking, but milk was not something that I kept saying milk, 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 milk. Right now, there's no way to do that, but milk, 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 milk. Well, I was saying milk, 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 milk. Well, I wouldn't get that right now. Milk. Can I get it? Can I? I cannot even do that. But the first year of college, I could not order pizza. I was so scared. After 10 years, after this many years, I don't care about calling anywhere. Like, I sometimes get upset when they don't understand my accent. Not upset, but I get agitated. Like, you should be able to understand what I'm saying. That's the mentality I got after 10 years. I can call to insurance company or make a claim. The phone is not a problem anymore. But in the beginning, I was so worried that I wouldn't be able to communicate over the phone. And I blame myself, my pronunciation, when I could not communicate to them. So it took about few years. I wouldn't say just a year, probably until like in the class, I could communicate with friends because they can read my mouth or like my expression, but phone was something very, very. It's purely audio. Until I met the office, probably that's it. Until I met the office, until I met Dwight, I wouldn't be able to order pizza. I don't know how I became like this, but I was so naive. Wow. I'm still naive too, probably. Okay. Not much stitching. Sorry. I did not stitch much today. A lot of talking. I hope this was a good talk for answering the question and explain what Japan is and what Sashiko is. I got and it's really appreciated. The question itself is very, 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 very interesting. And to be honest, I don't know what I don't know. And I don't know what you don't know. So I just noticed that you're not doing Asanoha. Yes, I'm not doing Asanoha because today I wouldn't be able to do that because the question I received was really, really good. So I kind of figured that it's not a good idea to do that. The next week, I will continue the question from the audience or people who are here. And those questions may require some of the practice. So, one question, not a question, it's probably a topic to discuss. One topic to discuss is dualism. Dualism? Non-dualism is sort of equal to, not equal, similar to not making the conclusion. Can we stand without the answer? Like, when I say that Sashiko is not, let's say, visible mending, Sashiko is not the word for visible mending. And when I say that word in English conversation, in your brain, automatically, naturally, the follow-up question comes up, then what? So if I deny it, we all expect that there will be something else as the answer. So that's already kind of dualism, A or B. If A is not right, B should be right. How about in between? How about in between might be the answer? And it is kind of important concept, especially when the rule is not written. There was the question comes with a very good example about living in Japan, watching others. Common sense in Japan can be quite strong. For example, there's a convenience store everywhere, right? And there's a convenience store in Japan everywhere, and there's a toilet. Anybody can use that. Would one have to buy something when they use the toilet? The answer is yes. There's no written rules. There's no legal jurisdiction, legal restrictions, but it's kind of like it's recommended. Yet it's more like it's like a tip for that matter. There's nothing wrong with there's a lot of things wrong with not tipping. Would you, when you go to the gas station, would you use the bathroom without buying some candy or gas? In Western culture has those things, and I'm not saying like 100% English culture is all A or B, but it's more comfortable to have the written rules. In Japanese, there are a lot of things which is not written or even qualified. So I will be able to talk about those dualism as well. And next thing, the third question that I would like to be able to talk about is the prayers, tears, and artistic process. This is another good topic. I often say that Sashiko is the practice of prayer. Sashiko is the process of praying. And it's confusing. It is probably confusing. And because some Japanese may not agree with what I say Sashiko as the prayer. Some people might say like Sashiko is just simply stitching. It is more like the impression. It's like a summary of all my experience. If I were to summarize everything I went through in one word, it is the prayer. So, well, it's a really, it's a very bad introduction, like very inefficient summary, because I don't really expect, like without context, it can be confusing. But this live streaming is the place for me to explain the context, so I will be able to talk about it. But yeah, it comes with the spiritual component as well, so I don't want to go that far. Like, can Sashiko, like sometimes Sashiko is introduced as the happy stitching, and I often say that please enjoy Sashiko. But defining Sashiko as the happy stitching or joy stitching is already simplified. We don't know that. It can be the curse, right? Technically speaking. The prayer is not the way to curse, ideally, but we cannot say that there were no Sashiko which carries negative images. I sometimes get scared by some of the borrow. Boro are beautiful. Boro pieces are beautiful, and I find it, beautiful, and we enjoy that. At the same time, not all boros are good to me. Some of them I do not want to keep in my house. Sometimes I don't even want to touch. Look is okay. Probably over the picture I get scared, but no matter how valuable it is, some of the boro I do not want to own it, even if they give it to me for free. Probably washing might be able to help that negative image, but like in Shinto, the washing with water is a pretty strong purification. So that might help my mind, but it is. Sashiko introduced in English right now is focused on the good side only, and that's great. That's great. That's very great. I hope that you enjoy Sashiko, and I hope that you get very positive experience and outcome of Sashiko. But that's not the everything. That's not like if one explains that Sashiko is happy stitching, then something important will be missing. Something very important will be left behind. The fear of Tsuchiko-san thinks that fear or scared of boro. That fear is something we can explain, but not be able to communicate 100% sure. So, well, after all, I'm trying to kind of come to the conclusion. I'm trying to give the conclusional answer right now because I got a really nice question. I really appreciate it. The questions like that is really helpful for me to elaborate the live streaming. See, I didn't stop today. I stopped stitching, but I did not stop talking. So I am trying to my best to answer the questions. At the same time, because I cannot answer those questions, I cannot offer the conclusion that in the package, in the small packages which can answer everything. Therefore, I have this live streaming every week, and I do have this social media to explain another story. Each story may, not a may, each story does not. Each story will not explain or answer the question, offer the kind of concrete definition you're looking for. But collectively, by reading it, you may get something. And it is the best comment I get is that one person said like she understood that she wouldn't be able to understand so easily what Sashiko is. That's a very good first step because I feel that way too. It's a very important step. I would not understand what Sashiko is in this life because it's kind of too ordinary. Yet I would like to make sure that to do best to understand it. So I hope that you can, not hope, it is my intention for everybody to find their own Sashiko without filtering others. So don't let others to define what Sashiko is for you. Instead, I want to try your best, or even you don't have to even try your best. I want to enjoy it, and then you find your own Sashiko. But that process, I hope that you will do that with acknowledgement and hopefully respect for the people behind the word. Wow. See, if I have a questions, I can summarize very well. I feel like it has something dark or some bad soul in it. Wow. Not all Boro. It has dark soul or bad soul in it, but we don't know that, right? We cannot guarantee that every Boro is from positive side. So I sometimes feel very scared when they worship Boro. I make Boro to be. And that is no problem because that's my creation, that's my mother's creation, so there's no, it's kind of purified version for us, not for anybody else. Bad soul. But I see what she means, what you mean. So there are a lot of stories around it. Sashiko, Boro, and well, I'm sorry. This conclusion-wise, do not discuss. This is kind of wrong for that matter. If the one discuss, is this Sashiko or is this Boro? That's a very strange question. Is this Sashiko technique? Is this Boro technique? That's a very, very weird question for me, for us. Boro and Sashiko are kind of same thing. Boro and Sashiko are almost same thing. And I will explain that in my class. I will explain that in my webinar and stuff like that. But Sashiko and Boro are, technically speaking, it's the same thing. Cursed. Some of the Boro may be cursed. Yeah, I wouldn't deny that. I don't know. Have I ever? Well, I try to avoid anything I don't like. I don't mind going to flea market, but I sometimes run away from the specific stores, specific places. Because if I feel something wrong, I wouldn't go there. So, there might, yeah, absolutely, there might be peace with curse. We don't know. If you feel something is wrong, that something's wrong, and that might affect your life. So it's personal belonging. It's personal belongings, and we add the value from really. I don't want to say unhealthy way, but in a strange way. So it is beautiful. It is beautiful, and it has a value from anthropologic and folklore perspective. But please know that there are quite many Japanese who do not like or even are scared of Sashiko. My sister is like that with used clothes. She feels the energy of the person who wore it before she runs away. Yeah, so and it's not only Japanese things to do. Like if one learn the stories behind it, or like if one acknowledge the stories behind it, it is kind of common sense. Like if the piece of fabric was soaked in the blood over time, you don't want to have that. We don't know that, right? So, but we don't know. We don't know those things. So it's kind of too much simplification, too much romanticizing if we put the value to something we don't know. So we know so little. We don't have to know the whole story, but we should really try to understand what it is behind it. Yuki, 15 minutes past 10. I really enjoyed today's live streaming. And I will have another question next week, so I will talk about that next week. After the next week, 2 weeks from now, I will be in. I cannot pronounce that city. I'm so sorry. Rowley. I apologize. There's too much L and R. Rowley in North Carolina for the QuiltCon. So I won't be able to do the live streaming on Thursday night. Not probably, absolutely not. I have to rest, so no live streaming on the weekend 2 weeks from now. But next week I will have the live streaming with the questions that I received. I am trying to live zero waste, and I only buy second-hand among Native Americans we use to save purity and so like that. Sage to purify. That's like if you have own ritual, own process to purify, then that's one way to do that. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Rowley. Okay, Rowley. 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 Okay, I will go off. I hope you have a great night. And again, the questions are very much appreciated. I welcome any questions, unless it makes somebody, if it's offensive to somebody, I might not take that. But unless it's for me or for us, that's something I can do. I would be happy to talk about that. Okay, and I hope you have a good night, and thank you so much.